A legal fight over public disclosure. KPBS sues the San Diego Sheriff's Department to find out how quickly it responds to outside complaints. The government shutdown is now in its second month. How one local charity is trying to help as workers miss another paycheck.
In 30 years, there's estimates that over 300,000 homes and commercial businesses worth $136 billion are going to be in harm's way of future sea level rise.
The surf has subsided at local beaches, but what we saw might be a preview of a changing coastline brought on by climate change.
Hopefully we did everything right. We checked all the boxes. We think we did, but you never know. Everybody's human. It's a big application. We're sitting 8th.
Medical marijuana comes to Vista. See how the city is starting the process for those who want to open a dispensary. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. How long does the San Diego County Sheriff's Department take to respond to complaints made about its employees? That's a question KPBS has been asking the department for 7 months. The Sheriff's Department won't answer. So KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tragesser says KPBS is taking the fight to court for the public's right to know.
Over the past 2 years, multiple women accused Sheriff's Deputy Richard Fisher of sexual misconduct. They said they reported the conduct to the Sheriff's Department, but never received a response. Fisher is now on trial, but the unanswered complaints prompted KPBS to ask the Sheriff's Department, how long does it usually take to respond? We initially asked the Sheriff's Department in June 2018 for the dates all complaints were filed about its employees for the past 8 years and when the Sheriff's Department responded to each complaint. The Sheriff's Department denied that request, citing 2 different parts of the law. The first says certain records are exempt from disclosure. But
the exemption has an exception.
Matthew Hallgren is an attorney fighting on behalf of KPBS for the public records. Hallgren is a First Amendment specialist at the Shepard Mullen law firm.
The exception says that even though some records relating to investigations may be withheld, the police and sheriff's departments nevertheless need to provide information relating to the time of a complaint and the time of a response to the complaint. That's exactly the information that KPBS has requested, so it's right there in the text of the statute.
The Sheriff's Department also cited another part of the law that says personnel records of law enforcement officers should be kept confidential. But that's not what KPBS asked for. Hallgren says that doesn't apply to KPBS's request because it only protects records that can be linked to a specific police officer.
KPBS has only asked for the information regarding the date of the complaints and the dates they were responded to, and clearly that information, if isolated from other information, would not be able to be linked to any specific police officer.
KPBS contacted the Sheriff's Department and they declined to comment. Dave Myers is a 35-year veteran of the department who retired last summer after unsuccessfully running for sheriff. He says the department does not have a consistent system for handling complaints.
So the Sheriff's Department has a policy that anybody in the Sheriff's Department at any level can receive a complaint from the citizens or internally, and anybody at any level is encouraged to, per the policy, to handle that complaint at the lowest level possible.
He says that means a clerk working at the counter at a station could talk to someone from the public and close the complaint.
There's no other documentation. There's no other discussions. There may be a follow-up email, maybe to an immediate supervisor of what happened, and that would be the end of it.
Myers said that it's a very subjective process to decide what complaints are documented, which means the process could be abused.
If the public cannot trust law enforcement to police itself in a fair manner that's transparent, how are they going to trust that the process is working?
Last summer, San Diego Sheriff's Lieutenant Christina Bavinkoff described the process of how complaints are handled. She didn't do an interview on camera, but told KPBS, quote, all complaints are time and date stamped and responded to with a letter. But she said some complaints are handled verbally. For example, If someone comes to the station to complain about getting a ticket, they want to tell their side of the story, then we'll ask, "What would you like me to do?" And they might say, "Tell the deputy to be more professional." So we'll say, "Yes, ma'am, will do." In cases like that, complaints might not be documented. We still know very little about how the Sheriff's Department deals with minor complaints like that or sexual misconduct, even whether they're dealt with at all. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
Lawyers for KPBS have filed paperwork to ask a judge to decide whether the Sheriff's Department has to provide the records. Protecting kids from human trafficking starts at school. That was the message today from the San Diego District Attorney. Summer Stephan announced 3 new programs to educate, prevent, and raise awareness about human trafficking. She also spoke about the newly formed San Diego Trafficking Prevention Collective, which will help train students in all San Diego public schools. The programs will consist of in-school education, after-school intervention, and interactive multimedia training. Stephan says these programs are needed to protect children from traffickers who prey on minors.
If you look in the eyes of somebody who's been a victim of human trafficking, you will never forget the look of someone who a predator tried to take their very dignity out of them. Why not start before that look sets in our children's eyes?
The FBI ranks San Diego as one of the top 13 worst regions for human trafficking. LA teachers have tentatively reached a deal with the second largest school district in the country. A deal was announced this morning at LA City Hall after 21 hours of negotiations between the teachers union and the school district. Details of the agreement have not been announced, but both sides say it addresses the core issues raised by teachers.
I'm delighted we've reached an agreement with UTLA that provides teachers with a well-deserved salary increase, that will reduce class size, and add more support to our students and educators in schools, including librarians, nurses, and counselors.
Austin Buettner and I, we certainly have our differences, and we've expressed those, and I think we'll continue to express those. But what we've been able to do over the last chunk of days is work together with a bunch of partners and a bunch of help to forge an agreement that we're both committed to making sure is implemented to make sure that our students are served and our schools are improved.
Teachers spent the day voting on the agreement. Once approved, they will likely go back to work tomorrow. The deal ends the first LA teacher strike in 30 years. It's day 32 of the partial government shutdown, which is unlikely to be resolved this week. Today is a payroll deadline for the 800,000 federal workers who are affected. That means they will miss a second paycheck. The Senate will vote this week on a proposal made by President Trump over the weekend. Republicans have 53 votes. They'll need 60 for the bill to pass. President Trump is trying to move forward with a plan to deliver a State of the Union speech next week. But House Speaker Nancy Pelosi hasn't said if she'll allow it.
Until she's serious about having a conversation and come to the table, she knows that the fact that she has a standing invitation here anytime she wants to come and anytime she wants to talk to the president. The American people deserve that. And this partisan bickering she's engaged in, holding the American people hostage, playing politics with people's lives, she's got to come here and negotiate, and we can get something done for the American people. Okay.
Another San Diego nonprofit joins the growing support for federal workers. Jewish Family Services opened a food bank today. They say the food bank will open every Tuesday until the shutdown ends.
I think we always understand that anyone who's coming to ask for assistance, even if it's for an understandable reason like the government shutdown, may be reticent to show up and ask for help. But really, we're just here as another source of helping out with groceries, because we know it's just as important to offset those costs so that you can pay rent or you can make your car payment, and there's no shame in asking for help.
Jewish Family Service says they can also help connect federal workers with resources to help cover bills and living expenses. President Trump says he might declare a national emergency to redirect money from other projects to build a new border wall. KQED's Thuy Vu talked with California Congressman John Garamendi about what that could mean for our state.
The president has said he's not going to back away from the $5.7 billion he wants for the border wall. The Democrats are saying we're not giving you that money. So what will be the tipping point then for this to get resolved? Because like you said, so many people, not only the furloughed workers, but many others are now impacted.
Open up the government. Take up any one of those 9 bills that are sitting on the Senate floor. Mitch McConnell, Senator McConnell, and the Republicans have an opportunity to put it on the president's desk. And we've been very clear, open up the government, and we'll talk about what we're going to do. We've offered, in fact, in the legislation that was before Congress, before the Christmas break, $1.6 billion for border security. Then the president, at the very last moment, demanded $5 billion, and then a day or two later, he wants $5.7 billion without any specification of where it would be built, what its purpose would be, how it would solve any of the problems at the border. We know that we have to be smart with the taxpayer money. Open up this government. We'll talk about all those things. We know that there's some parts of that border fence that have been built 20, 30 years ago that need to be repaired. We can talk about that. But it is unconscionable that the president would simply hold not only the employees and the federal employees and all of the contractors hostage, but now the total American economy is being held hostage for his campaign pledge.
So how do you think California will fare in all this? Because already the president has said he's threatening to divert money from the Army Corps of Engineers. Some of that money has been already approved for California. Yep. What projects in California are at risk here?
Well, this is something that you're going to do what, Mr. President? You're going to declare a national emergency. You're going to go to the Civil Works program of the Army Corps of Engineers, which we have put about $15 billion for disaster relief. And it turns out that $2.5 billion of those dollars are for California, specific flood protection in the South Bay of San Francisco Bay. We're talking about the Cupertino area. We're talking about the San Jose area, all of that. Flood protection. We know sea level is coming up. We know that Sacramento is the most flood-prone area in America, where you've got more than 2 million people at risk. And small cities like Marysville, 17,000 people. Just $13 million, but that is absolutely critical money on a city that literally is surrounded by 35-foot levees.
So what will happen if these projects are delayed or canceled?
Well, I just drove up the Sacramento River to get here from my home down in the Delta. And the Sacramento River is flowing full right now. Will these projects make a difference this winter? No. But these projects would be underway next winter or next summer, not so many months away, and they would provide additional protection. Would it make a difference? We don't know. But it might make all the difference between a horrible flood or no flood at all. And in Puerto Rico, another $2.5 billion to shore up the levees and the dams in that area, which were totally destroyed in the hurricane 2.5 years ago. It is unconscionable that the president would reach out and take away that money.
So how serious is the president at this point about this threat that he's making?
We've backed him down a bit. But nonetheless, he has kept alive the threat that he has the power to issue a national emergency. And based upon the laws that are on the books, which frankly should be changed, and I've introduced legislation to change those laws, he could dip into the civil works. All right. He could also dip into the U.S. military's military construction projects. We have to rein in his power, not just this way, but also with the national emergencies.
All right. John Garamendi, Congressman from Sacramento Valley, thank you for your time.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Supreme Court allows President Trump's ban on transgender service in the military to begin. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
A local community activist says she will challenge Congressman Juan Vargas in 2020.
My name is Aramie Glass Blake. And from a child, my mom and my grandmother prepared me not only to be a community servant, but to be a leader.
Aramik Glass Blake released an introductory campaign video highlighting her work on causes ranging from housing to veterans. Blake also works as a mental health counselor and motivational speaker. She says her priorities as a politician would be tuition-free college and health care for all. Congressman Vargas won re-election in November with 71% of the vote. A new poll shows more than 2/3 of Americans believe climate change is a serious issue. The Associated Press conducted the poll. 71% of those questioned say climate change is a reality. Only 9% say it's not. Nearly half said they would support a carbon tax to deal with the problem. The San Diego coastline was hit again this morning by high surf. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the king tides are giving us a look of California's future.
Storm swell and the beginning of king tides pummeled Imperial Beach late last week, but the high ocean waters are still affecting the coast this week. The high tide this morning peaking at more than 7 feet above normal sea levels in San Diego County. King tides are created when the sun and moon line up and combine their gravitational pull on the Earth's oceans. It is a peek at a world with higher sea levels. Surfrider Foundation's Stephanie Seekich-Quinn says there's a lot at stake.
In 30 years, there's estimates that over 300,000 homes and commercial businesses worth $136 billion are going to be in harm's way of future sea level rise. And that's just 30 years from now.
Seekich-Quinn helped put together a Lighthawk flight to see the impact along the San Diego coast.
We'd like a runway heading to the coast, and then low level, we're going to go up to Encinitas.
Pilot Bob Lang,
throttle response good,
captained the small 4-passenger plane.
The tide's coming all the way up to the riprap.
Craft included Encinitas City Council member Kelly Shea Hinsey. She said the coast is an important feature for her community.
We have pristine coastline, we have gorgeous ocean and mellow waves, and it's really a welcoming environment for recreation and just enjoyment. And so to me, top priority is that skinny stretch of beach where people love spending time.
Encinitas seems to have very little beach compared to Carlsbad.
But once in the air, she got a different perspective of the impact of king tides.
We had 0 beaches. There was no sand. And the waves were actually pounding right up to the cliffs.
Shea Hinsey says Encinitas officials are already working on developing roadmaps for the future. They include the city's climate action plan and efforts to restore sand dunes that could serve as buffers for the coast. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Afternoon. It's been a pretty gusty day today. Those Santa Ana winds, they are kicking up, and so we are under a weather alert. A high wind advisory mostly for the interior parts of San Diego County. Right along the coast, a bit of a breeze, but not as bad. Now take a look at these winds, up to 45 miles per hour for those gusts. That means blowing dust and snow will be an issue. Snow, not around here, but blowing dust could be an issue. Dangerous crosswinds and also higher gusts in the mountains. If you're traveling through the foothills or the surrounding valleys, you need to be careful. Could even see sporadic power outages. Now, as far as precipitation, it's dry. Much of California is getting a break. It is going to stay nice and dry for the next several days. Tonight, we're at 45 degrees. When you have clear skies and a wind, that leaves us wide open for chillier temperatures overnight, but warmer conditions during the day. So Oceanside at 34 tonight, Ramona gusty at 37, and Chula Vista right around 43 degrees. Here are the future winds. You could see Ramona in the 30s tonight and into tomorrow morning. This is your commute into work, 8 a.m., and it's still going to be pretty gusty out there. So plan accordingly as you're heading out the door. El Cajon also seeing those wind gusts in the 30s tomorrow morning. Now, all in all, tomorrow is going to be a beautiful day. We have high pressure in place, so we'll have plenty of sunshine, dry air moving into place, and our temperatures, they will be increasing. 68 in San Diego tomorrow, Ramona at 70, but remember, still pretty gusty. Borrego Springs at 69 and Mount Laguna 53 for the high. We're going to remain sunny mild and just pleasant through the end of this week. Here are those temperatures. Look at that. 66 on Wednesday, but then we jump up to those low 70s throughout the weekend, and it's going to be sunny along the coast. Inland, we start at 72. We're getting close to 80 this week with lots of sunshine. It is going to be beautiful, and those winds, they will be subsiding after tomorrow. In the mountains, expect to see some breezy conditions this week, sunshine, and we're going to remain mostly in the 50s. And in the deserts, we are in the 70s with sunshine, but again, a bit windy at times. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Back to you.
The city of Vista is getting into the marijuana business. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says this is the first day companies can apply for medical dispensaries.
People lined up at Vista City Hall Tuesday for a special kind of lottery. This raffle wasn't for cash, but for processing marijuana dispensary applications. A citizens' initiative passed last November is calling for up to 11 dispensaries within the city. Vista is using a lottery system to determine which applications will be looked at first.
9 KK.
I think lotteries for cities aren't ideal because they lead to potentially unqualified applicants getting in. That being said, they're really fun. It's a lot of action. It's exciting.
Elliot Lewis was one of the lucky ones. He was picked 8th, meaning if his application checks out okay, he'll be able to open up a medical dispensary.
So hopefully we did everything right. We checked all the boxes. We think we did, but you never know.
There was some confusion about the application process, though. For the last few days, people had been lining up outside City Hall, believing the city would rank applications on a first-come, first-served basis instead of holding a lottery.
Number 11, CC.
The way the initiative was written was to eliminate the chance of a lottery. So we were a little surprised when there was one.
Rodney Allen was one of the people who thought first in line meant first applications processed. He ended up getting picked last in the lottery on Tuesday.
Well, I'm not happy with it, of course. You can't blame them for their interpretation. They have a right to their own interpretation. They made their own interpretation, and that's where we're at. So I don't hold any ill will. I'm just going to do what I need to do.
In total, the city accepted 29 applications during the lottery Tuesday, and the application process wasn't cheap.
The submission is like $9,300, and then they took $100,000 like as a deposit or something, so it was not a small entry fee.
The city will keep collecting dispensary applications until next week before starting to vet them. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Medical marijuana is legal in all but a handful of states, but CBS is blocking an ad that would promote it during the Super Bowl. A cannabis company backed by former Speaker of the House, John Boehner, is ready to spend millions of dollars to air the ad. It calls for nationwide legalization. Marijuana is still classified as an illegal substance at the federal level. Hollywood was up early to find out who made the cut for Oscar nominations. KPBS film critic Beth Accomando looks at the snubs and the surprises.
First, the good news. Greek director Yorgos Lanthimos' savagely funny period film The Favorite and Alfonso Cuarón's sweepingly compassionate Mexican drama Roma topped the list of nominations for the 91st Academy Awards with 10 each. Cuarón's film even received both a Best Picture and Best Foreign Language film nod. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse got a well-deserved Best Animated Film nomination, but got overlooked for a Best Adapted Screenplay one, even though it was better written than most live-action films.
You gotta say I love you back.
Dad, are you serious?
I want to hear it.
You want to hear me
I
say
love
it?
you, Dad.
You're dropping me off out of school?
I love you, Dad.
Look at this place.
Dad, I love you.
Dad, I love you.
That's a copy.
This year also marked some firsts, most notably the first Best Director nomination for Spike Lee for Black Klansman after decades of stunning work. And Black Panther scored the first Best Picture nomination for a superhero film. Okay, now for some bad news. The Academy needs to be taken to task for failing to recognize Michael B. Jordan's nuanced villain in Black Panther and John David Washington's lead performance in Black Klansman. Despite the Academy's effort to recruit a more diverse voting membership, Oscar is still pretty white and mostly male. It ignores black performers who are in not just critically acclaimed films, but also films that are box office hits. Oscar was also stingy in its attention to such black films as If Beale Street Could Talk, giving it only a trio of nominations, and then completely overlooking Boots Riley's audacious debut with Sorry to Bother You.
Hey, young blood. What up? Let me give you a tip. Use your white boys.
Another glaring oversight was Toni Collette's searing performance in Hereditary in the Best Actress category. The Academy also chose to ignore Won't You Be My Neighbor and Three Identical Strangers for documentary. But to end on a positive note, Vice, which put Dick Cheney and the Republican Party under seriously funny assault, walked away with 8 nominations.
The vice presidency is also defined by the president. If we were to come to a different understanding.
Go on. The 91st Academy Awards will be broadcast live on February 24th on ABC. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, the impact of the government shutdown on law enforcement, how FBI agents continue to work without a paycheck, and the need for doctors in underserved communities, how young doctors are starting their careers where they're needed most. You can find tonight's stories at kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.